Ayubia National Park is located in the lush hills of the Galiat forests that stretch from near Islamabad to Abbottabad and through to Azad Kashmir. It is a sanctuary traditionally known for its spectacular scenery and its unspoiled, peaceful surroundings. But in the last few decades, that has changed. Every year, more than 120,000 tourists visit the park in the summer season. The area has become increasingly popular and is now bustling with traffic and large-scale development. Where there were trees and streams, there are now hotels and shops. The fumes emitted from vehicles affects not only trees and plant life, but also the wild animals that live in the forest. The large number of hotels, summer houses and restaurants brings its own set of problems. The careless disposal of waste by these hotels and restaurants threatens the fragile ecosystem of the park. Garbage and contaminated streams are to be found all along the once pristine trekking routes. This solid waste and contaminated water has become a serious threat to the environment. Much of it is non-biodegradable, and the rest decomposes at a particularly slow rate due to the cold climate. The garbage can harm the animals of the forest too, as they forage for food. Where there were once streams of crystal clear water, there are now rivers of garbage. The polluted water affects communities downstream who have to go further from home every day to find clean water. Waterborne diseases force the local people to spend money on medical care, which they can hardly afford. All this pollution contributes daily to the degradation of the forest, and Ayubia is under threat. Both visitors and local communities need to be aware of the harm the waste and pollution is causing. The lack of proper waste management makes the problems worse. All this waste pollutes the forest and harms animals and humans alike. If we don't change the way we treat the forest, there will soon be no sanctuary left. Nothing for the visitors to enjoy, nor for the mountain communities that have made Ayubia their home for generations.
Prime Minister Imran Khan says all pillars of the state are working for development of the country within their domains. He was talking to Advisor on Parliamentary Affairs, Babar Awan. Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi says Indian occupation forces have been spreading fear among the unarmed and innocent people of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir through continuous oppression and persecution. Pakistan is deeply concerned over continued incarceration and deteriorating health conditions of Kashmiri leaders and others who have been languishing under squalid conditions in the midst of a COVID-19 pandemic in the infamous Tihar and other jails. In Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, police say an Indian Army officer and 2 others planted illegal acquired weapons on the bodies of 3 young men to pass them off as terrorists after killing them in a staged gun battle in Chopaya in July this year. Information Minister Shibli Faraz briefs media that the Prime Minister is committed not to give NRO to anyone. Says opposition leaders are trying their best to pressurize the government and create chaos in the country. 55 people have died due to coronavirus, with more than 1,900 new infections reported in the past 24 hours. Co-pilot Major Ayaz laid to rest in Karachi with full military honours. Major Ayaz embraced martyrdom as an Army aviation helicopter crashed during evacuation mission in Gilgit-Baltistan on Saturday. US President Donald Trump signs into law a coronavirus relief and spending package bill averting a partial government shutdown. Trump had initially refused to sign the bill, saying he wanted to give people bigger one-off payments. New Zealand remains 192 runs ahead as Fahim Ashraf's 91 saves Pakistan from follow-on as the Green Shirts finished day 3 on 239 all-out in the first innings of the first Mount Maunganui Test. Action live on PTV Sports. Cristiano Ronaldo is the player of the century as he picks up the most prestigious award of the Globe Soccer Awards in Dubai. Real Madrid were voted the club of the century and Pep Guardiola was voted coach of the century. I'm Ahmed Nawaz. This is PTV World, and those were the headlines for this hour. But for further details and live streaming, you can log on to our website world.ptv.com.pk. You can find us on Facebook with the name of PTV World. Follow us on Twitter @WorldPTV. Stay tuned. Coming up next is Newsroom with Umar Khalid Butt.
The quality, not the longevity of one's life is what is important.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. You're watching Newsroom. I'm your host, Khalid. But today is Monday, the 28th of December, 2020. As the year comes to an end, the stories nevertheless continue to remain in the limelight from the national and the international front. Let's begin with the segments that we'll be talking about during the course of this 1 hour. We'll begin with Pakistan's fight against terrorism. As you very well know, 7 soldiers have been martyred in a gun attack on the frontier corps Balochistan post in Harnai. That was, of course, said by the military media wing on Sunday. Not the first time that this has happened. Earlier also in October, 14 security men, 7 personnel of Frontier Corps and as many civilian guards employed by the OGDCL had been martyred in another attack. What is happening? What are the different Baloch militant groups that are active in the area? Who is behind all of this? This will be our first segment. Then, ladies and gentlemen, in our second segment, we'll be talking about the next round of the Doha talks that are going to begin between the Afghan Taliban and the Afghan government on the 5th of January. But contrary to what Ashraf Ghani Sahab had said, that they might take place in Afghanistan, they will be taking place in Doha, as has been confirmed by a top official. So what will be the outcome of this second round of talks? We are all very hopeful, all very optimistic. We want this to come to a logical conclusion, but let's see what happens. Our third segment, ladies and gentlemen, is about the Indian army that planted weapons on the bodies of slain Kashmir civilians, and now the Indian police have accused an army officer and 2 associates of planting weapons on bodies of 3 laborers killed in disputed Kashmir to make them look as if they were rebels in a staged gun battle. This happened in July this year, and in a rare probe by the Indian army, they have found out that it was the Indians that were behind all of this, and of course they have been apprehended, and the necessary course of action is being taken against them. A police statement issued on Sunday that the police said that the officer and the 2 others planted illegally acquired weapons and material on their dead bodies after stripping them of their identities and tagged them as hardcore terrorists. Well, not the first time, but the first time that the Indians have actually admitted to a wrongdoing as far as the so-called alleged terrorist activities in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir and other places is concerned. Now also we'll be talking about the updates as far as the coronavirus is concerned. The second wave of the pandemic is upon us. 1,800 COVID-19 infections have surfaced on Sunday. Ahmedabad has once again become the epicenter of the most number of cases in the country, and of course this has been told as per the data that we have received by the NCOC, but nevertheless the number of cases are slowly and steadily increasing. What needs to be done, what has been done, also will be discussed. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, Iqbal Bano, a ghazal singer like no other, her 82nd birth anniversary is being observed today. Born in 1938, she passed away in 2009, but she is still remembered for her fiery ghazals and her melodious way of singing the ghazals. We will be paying tribute to her in our last segment. Let's begin, ladies and gentlemen, with the very first segment, that is terrorism in Pakistan. Something that has been continuing in Pakistan, but we have had 2 major operations. Their forces have had 2 major operations, have had huge success in eliminating terrorism and the scourge of extremism and terrorism from the country. Nevertheless, there are elements still in some parts of the country that are trying to harbor such activities, and the latest in this state in which 7 soldiers have been martyred in a gun attack on a frontier corps Balochistan post in Harnai. And of course this happened yesterday, not the first time. A couple of days back a lot of terrorists were apprehended, but before that in October this very year about 14 people were martyred as well, as I said in the introduction, who were officers of the OGDCL as well as those of the Frontier Constabulary. What is happening in all of this scenario? Who is behind it? What needs to be done? To talk about this, we've been joined by 2 eminent guests with us in the studio. Let me introduce them to you one by one. Firstly is Brigadier Retired Amjad Ali. He is a senior analyst. Brigadier Saab, thank you very much to have joined us and to have been part of the show. We see you finally face to face in the studio. And my second guest, ladies and gentlemen, is Syed Muhammad Ali, Director CAS and also an expert in foreign affairs. Thank you very much, Syed Muhammad Ali, to have joined us here. Let's begin with you, Brigadier Retired Amjad Ali Saab. Baloch militant trends, nothing new. The forces have been trying to apprehend those trends, whether it be the Majid Brigade or the other different brigades that have been in activity since 2011 and even before that. in these latest spate of attacks that we have witnessed in October and then right now, in which 7, of course, people from the FC were martyred, what is the basic intention behind it, and who do you feel is behind it all? Directly, then we'll talk about the indirect causes of it all.
Thank you very much, Umar. First of all, we should understand that Balochistan is a region in our Pakistan which is our soft belly, in fact. And there is a reason for that. And these types of insurgencies, they have not started taking place right now. They have been from mid-70s, early 70s, they have started taking place. And then different groups, they have started coming up. But who is backing them? Let's go directly who is backing them. No one else than India. Because India is the one. What happened with India in the last couple of days, couple of months and in this last year? India has been attacked by Chinese in Ladakh. India has been thrown out of Chabahar. India has been exposed in Afghanistan, whereas the talks in Afghanistan which were taking place, India was not part of it. And they used to think that we are the strategic partners with the Afghanistan, or we perhaps will do something with Pakistan. They are the one who started with this new slogan of Greater Balochistan, Liberate Balochistan, and they started investing in Balochistan. Now, after having met this shameful, I must say, defeat at the hands of different elements by, of course, Pakistani agencies, what India could have done? India is trying to do which she is doing now. They are trying to create, sort of chaos, confusion, and they are trying to create terrorism, wave of terrorism, surge in the wave of terrorism by telling the people that this is an unstable region, and this region should necessarily not be part of Pakistan because there are many human rights violations going on in this region. Whatever groups those are working in Afghanistan, major group is BLA, of course, Pakistan Liberation Army, Balochistan Liberation Army, where their main leader was being treated once he was injured. He was treated in Delhi, from where they were getting funding. We have a dossier we have just submitted to United Nations and the European Union.
That was presented by DG ISPR and the Foreign Minister.
Yes, and with concrete empirical evidences, with videos, with CDs, with audio recordings, with the paper evidences. We have told them, and we have even the Pakistan Foreign Office and the DG ISPR have even told them the amount of funding they have been receiving and from which channel they have been receiving, from Dubai or England and from whatever. So this new wave of terrorism, having said all this, I personally feel that there is a surge, but it is not that alarming where we should just, start worrying about something. Our intelligence agencies, our security agencies, they are handling it well. And this particular attack which you mentioned, the 7 persons
of the
FC, they got murdered. It is because a few days earlier, intelligence-based operation was carried out where 10 of the terrorists were killed, a number of them were apprehended, and there were lot of information which were being acquired, retrieved from them.
All right. And that is one. This is a reactionary tactic that they have employed. In fact, all right, Ali. When we come to tactics, reaction, action by our friendly or not so friendly neighbor India. When we take out dossiers, when we give them to the entire world, we have given it to the United Nations, we have given it to the OIC. What do you feel as an expert does Pakistan need to do now that the facts, figures have been distributed to all the elements that are concerned, all the elements that could put pressure on India to stop such activity?
Thank you, Umar. I think Pakistan needs to do what it is doing, but it needs to do more. What more can be done? One is the strong legal evidences that Brigadier Saab just pointed out, that we have come up and shared with the international community. That is a very important legal evidence that we have shared, that provides, that also strengthens and gives credibility to our narrative, which has been vindicated in the last so many years. Third is that it strengthens our moral ground, our moral high ground, and it gives an evidence, a very important evidence to the Baloch people as well, that Pakistan is committed to the welfare, to the security and the prosperity of Balochistan. And whoever is trying to destabilize this region is not a friend of Baloch people. And it is very important for them to understand that CPEC is the anchor of geo-economic order in the future. So Balochistan will be the fulcrum on which the BRI project will evolve and emerge.
And of course, there's more and more evidence as far as that is concerned, because work is going on the second phase of the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, and all the parties concerned are very optimistic of how the things are rolling out. But Brigadier Saab, when we talk about the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, and of course the fact that India is at loggerheads with China over Ladakh, B, there is a certain backing of India by a certain superpower as we speak so as to counter Chinese activities in the region, and C, the fact itself that the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor is a harbinger of prosperity in the region, which of course countries like India do not like and do not want to happen, whether it be directly or indirectly. What is going to happen in the future, and how prepared are we in Pakistan to counter such activities?
Of course, India would never like that this project is completed and reaches its culmination point. There is a reason for that, because this is a project of which we are the pioneers. We have started this CPEC project with China, and this is the base for the BRI. And if the China is involved in it, then Russia has come in, then certain Middle Eastern countries, they are interested, even certain European countries, they have shown interest, and this is the region which is the richest region, and it used to be known as the poorest region of Pakistan. But when these CPEC activities, inshallah, when these will be completed in next coming 4 or 5 years, and you will see the type of prosperity which will be brought to this region, and the type of good things and the welfare projects and the heart and mind winning factors which will play into for the people of the Balochistan. I am sure that will be already CPEC is a thrown in the neck of Indians, but that I think will be the last nail in the coffin of Indians. Terrorists and Hogmanic designs or their ill designs or ill intentions which they have about Balochistan.
All right, but Brigadier Saab, one thing is to counter such activities by our forces, by our different military wings that are present there. Another thing is to strengthen Balochistan from the inside, to empower the people of Balochistan, to let them know who is on the right side and who is on the wrong side. What needs to be done on that aspect as well, sir?
The political will is required. For which, as far as the security forces are concerned, Pakistan Armed Forces are concerned, I think they are doing a lot for Balochistan. There are a lot of projects which are being done by the armed forces for the welfare of the people of that area. But we need to have a political will, where we need to have a very strong political system inside. And anything which is all the successes achieved by the security forces should be backed and strengthened by the political activities and development activities. Until the time those are not taken there, the people of those areas will not feel strengthened. And I am sure in this election, after PTI government has come up, when they will go to the local government system in Balochistan, there will be many more good things which will happen in Balochistan.
All right, Sayyid Muhammad Ali, when we talk of these different elements and the way Balochistan needs to be strengthened from the inside and from the outside, externally and internally, what would you like to add to that?
Very quickly, I think important points raised by Brigadier Saab. I think public diplomacy is very important. What Pakistan Armed Forces are doing, what our law enforcement agencies are doing is important in the hard power domain, in the kinetic domain. But it needs to be reinforced through our soft power. It needs a substantive, not just political commitment and will, but also a huge investment in the socio-economic development by those who have a stake in the political system of Balochistan. The people need to be seen and understand the benefits, the tangible, immediate, visible benefits of remaining committed and loyal to the state of Pakistan, and they should have an incentive in supporting and benefiting from the CPEC projects. So I think China and Pakistan have a huge onus. They need to reach out to the people, to the common people. This will also indirectly reduce the space for miscreants and insurgents and terrorists, because it will defeat their locus standi, their narrative that we are trying to liberate the simple Balochi people. The Balochi people need to reject these people who are trying to misguide them and misuse their soil and their blood.
All right. Now, Brigadier Saab, Let's talk a little bit about the Baloch militancy that is, of course, has been rampant since a couple of years now. First, suicide attack in 2011 against Nasir Mengal. Then, of course, there were our forces that, of course, apprehended that. Then there are different militant groups, whether it be the Majid Brigade, whether it be the BLF, whether it be other small factions that are, of course, operative in the region of Balochistan. As far as the government and the military efforts are concerned, that needs to be lauded as well for all the heavy-handed work that they've done to eliminate or to reduce as much as possible the scourge of such terrorism and extremism. But as far as the people of Balochistan is concerned, how much of the responsibility, how much of the onus also comes on them?
90%, more than 90% come on them. There is a reason. There are many things which are, those are propagated in different types of media, and there are many things which are intentionally or unintentionally not propagated for certain security reasons. More than 80% of the terrorist groups are the militants of the Balochistan. They have already surrendered and they are towards Pakistan. These are the residual effects, what they are trying to do it. You just see the pattern of their terrorist activities in last just 5 years. And South Asian, this terrorism index will give you the comparison that how did it decrease gradually and what were the causes why it decreased. Just because these are the groups which were day out and day in, they were being exposed by our agencies, they were being exposed by the national media, they were being exposed at different forums, and whenever they were exposed they tried to withdraw, and many of them they tried to surrender, and they have been surrendering. So these small little terrorist acts which are here and there, of course we lose our lives and very precious lives, but at the same time there is nothing to worry about it because these are just residuals. These are the leftover people which are there, and as such that soon this activity of economic corridor will start. There will be a lot of opportunities for the people of Balochistan, and they'll be more, they'll feel more responsible, and they'll feel more, obliged for this thing, that whatever has been portrayed to them, it is not the case. Everything which is being done, it is just for the people of Balochistan at large.
All right. Finally, Brigadier Sir, my last question to you before we move on to the second segment. When it comes to the different forms of attacks, different strategies of attacks that these militant groups have undergone on, whether it be Pakistani elements, whether it be our military elements, even Chinese elements in the area, whether it be IED attacks, gun attacks, or other forms of attack, do you feel that the groups are changing their strategies, A, as per the need of the hour, and B, if that is so, are we effectively countering those different techniques of or those different strategies, whether it be they be directly or indirectly? Of course, we know whose backing they have, but nevertheless, what do we see in the future, Brigadier Saab? Should we be concerned or should we be optimistic about the future of Balochistan?
We should be optimistic. We are concerned, whereas we are concerned, we should be optimistic at the same time. You see, Pakistan and Pakistan Armed Forces and intelligence agencies have a unique honor of on-job training of terrorism since last 16 to 70 years. And no other country has ever done it. And we virtually eliminated terrorism, and we had the worst kind of insurgency that was logical based, and it was religious based. The narrative was a very, very tough narrative, which was very difficult to counter, and they had to spend a lot of time to make that counter narrative for this type of insurgency. And finally they successfully did it. And I'm sure the agencies and the armed forces and government of Pakistan, they are mindful of all the threat. Threat perception is a key point, is the pivot point whenever you are making a response or evolving a strategy or making a counter strategy. So threat perception is it has the position of a pivot. Till the time you have not assessed the complete threat spectrum, you cannot evolve any strategy. And whatever I saw, I served this institution for good about 32 to 34 years. And I have been just observing that the type of understanding the present military leadership has about the terrorism, about insurgencies, about the fifth generation warfare, and which ultimately gave birth to hybrid warfare. This fifth generation warfare necessarily is the war of narratives, because it is the war of information and perceptions. These perceptions, for this we need to have a very strong narrative, and that narrative doesn't have to be built by the security forces only. It has to be built at national level, and for that I'm sure the people are on it. They are not
All
with
right.
eyes closed. There are certain things which
All right.
for certain
I can understand that. Thank you very much, Brigadier Amjad Ali Saab, senior analyst, to talk about a very important matter, that is terrorism in Pakistan. Our forces, and you have been part of that, have been instrumental in eliminating the scourge of terrorism and extremism from different parts of the country. These little remnants remain, and we need to handle them effectively. And of course, our military is doing the needful in collaboration with the people of Balochistan in order to eliminate the little amount of this little percentage of extremist elements that remain in areas such as Balochistan as well. Yes, you wanted to add something to that.
Just one last sentence I want to say. President Musharraf once said, I quote, Indians, please lay off. You can't do anything in Balochistan.
Well, I hope the message is loud and clear. Thank you very much, Brigadier Amjad Ali Saab, to have joined us for this. Ladies and gentlemen, the message is loud and clear, and this was something that Mr. Musharraf had said a long time back. Indians need to lay off Balochistan, and the message has also been conveyed loud and clear through a dossier that the DGISPR and the Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi not only showed to the media with facts and figures, but also have now transmitted and forwarded to the United Nations and to the OIC as well. We will, inshallah, eliminate these last remnants as well from the Pakistani soil. Our second segment begins, but after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. In our second segment, ladies and gentlemen, of the day is about the second round of the Afghan peace talks that are to begin from the 5th of next month, barely a week or 10 days later in Doha as well. At first, it was thought that it would begin in Afghanistan because Ashraf Ghani, President of Afghanistan, had said that he wanted the second round of talks to begin in Afghanistan. But now it has been officially confirmed that they will begin in Doha as well. To talk about the implications, the positives and the negatives, and this continuity of talks between the Afghan Taliban and the Afghan government as far as the Afghan peace talks is concerned, what has been Pakistan's stand as well, and Pakistan's role in all of this. We have been rejoined by Sayyid Muhammad Ali Saab. Thank you very much, Ali, again to stay for this second segment. How important is this second round of peace talks?
It's very important, and it's somewhat more critical as well. And let me add one more word. It is entering a delicate stage because the date is very significant. 5th January in Doha. It is 2 weeks before the Biden administration takes office. So it's quite apparent that who is keen on having a final round of these talks in order to ensure that the Trump administration gets maximum political gain and leverage and credit for achieving anything that they want to achieve. But for Pakistan, the things are very clear because we have remained consistently resolute for the last 19 years. And our position on Afghanistan has remained vindicated. that Pakistan has always attempted to bring all the stakeholders on the same page. What is important is that the spanner to this process could be if, as per the election manifesto and the claims made by Biden administration, they review the process. And that could create some annoyance among the ranks of the Afghan Taliban, because they would not be too keen on committing themselves to more deeper commitments or greater obligations towards the US. So that is a spanner that we need to be watchful
But nevertheless,
of.
we need to be very careful about this as far as, because the two sides that began those talks, Ali, if I'm, correct me if I'm wrong, were the Afghan Taliban in the United States.
Yes.
So if there are certain question marks that the Afghan Taliban start to have about the US, that could, I mean, as a kind of a supposition, put those talks in a lot of doldrums.
That is very important, because like I earlier pointed out in some of the earlier programs we did, that the maximum political capital was being invested by the Trump administration, because they know that their election campaign was hinging on securing an achievement.
The Trump administration
That
also was the one that wanted the removal of the maximum number of troops from Afghanistan.
Absolutely. So if the US reviews its commitment for a quick exodus of its troops, that could be a spanner. That is an important factor. The second is obviously if there are some more conditionalities that Biden administration expects. But in any case, Pakistan has won the trust and confidence of all Afghan stakeholders of the US state, not just the previous outgoing administration, that we are the critical player in terms of bringing everybody on board. But that is very important. In future, there are some sort of rays of hope as well. Iran and also Russia and China are also important players. Hopefully Iran will have better relations with Biden administration than Trump administration, because Biden administration is likely to review the JCPOA as well. So all this dynamic, and China, although the strategic competition will continue between US and Beijing, but the hostility will somehow reduce with the Biden administration's more careful diplomatic approach. So these trends indicate that the process will continue, and hopefully Pakistan's central role will also be there. And inshallah, once all the stakeholders work together, we are hoping that some arrangement which is good for the Afghani people and also for the region can be achieved.
Let's talk about the Pakistani role in all of these peace talks, of bringing in fact the two sides together. You know how instrumental Pakistan has been in bringing Afghan Taliban and the Afghan government together on one table as far as the negotiation process is concerned. The US in fact asked Pakistan for itself after having put it on the back burner and of course labeled it one thing or the other. You remember the different tweets that Donald Trump had posted in the past as well. Now, in all of this context, when Pakistan's role is central, when all of the players, whether it be Abdullah or the Afghan Taliban, have recently visited Pakistan, and our Prime Minister has also visited Afghanistan and has said that Pakistan will always support Afghanistan, and as has our Foreign Minister, who has been taking out statements as far as Afghanistan is concerned. In all of this, Pakistan's role becomes all the more important when this second, as you say, delicate phase is in process. Before I come to you, Sayyid Muhammad Ali, to talk about your point of view, we've been joined by Rahimullah Yusufzai Saab, who is a senior analyst and an expert on Afghan affairs. Rahimullah Yusufzai Saab, thank you very much to have joined us. You must have heard the question that I was trying to pose to Ali. How effective is this second round of talks going to be, and how important is Pakistan's role going to be, sir?
I think the first thing they have to do is to come up with a consensus agenda, because they negotiated for a few days before the break for 20 days and they could not agree on the agenda. They both have their own priorities in terms of the agenda points, and there are vast differences, because the first item on the agenda for the Afghan government is ceasefire. They want to discuss ceasefire first, while Taliban have put it in the end. Their first point is to have Sharia, Islamic law in Afghanistan.
And
I
why
think they
is
will
diversification in the first and the last point, when it comes to peace?
Do some tough negotiation. The talks, this is a good omen that at least the talk will resume on the 5th of January as agreed. Although, President Ashraf Ghani wanted these talks to be shifted to Afghanistan from Doha, but Taliban did not agree. So the talks will take place at a neutral place, which is Doha, Qatar. And I don't expect any big breakthrough. They will haggle, they will, try to do some bargaining on the agenda, and then they will begin the formal talks based on the agenda.
All right. Rahimullah Yousafzai Sahab, what are the bargaining chips for either side, for the Afghan Taliban and the Afghan government? What do they want?
I think the Afghan government and the Americans, they want reduction in violence, they want permanent ceasefire. But for Taliban, using force and not agreeing to a ceasefire at this stage, it is their bargaining point. Because they want some concessions before they move on to discuss the ceasefire. And I think that will be that they will like their remaining 7,000 prisoners to be released. They will like the names of Taliban leaders to be removed from the UN Security Council blacklist. They will want some assurances on the Sharia or the new system of government. These are the things which Taliban want. The Afghan government, they say we have made some achievements in the last 2 decades, and we want to retain and sustain those achievements. For example, democracy, freedom of the media, and human rights, women's rights, all these kind of things. So there will be these very important agenda points which have to be discussed and resolved.
Sir, in your point of view, Rahimullah Yousafzai Sahab, you're an eminent expert as far as Afghanistan is concerned and Afghanistan's role in the region, and of course the different elements that are involved in Afghanistan as we speak. Which is the middle ground, in your point of view, that the Afghan Taliban and the Afghan government could maybe agree to in the coming weeks?
I don't think there's any middle ground at this stage, because the success of the peace talk means that the Ashraf Ghani government will have to go. And there will be a new government, maybe a neutral government of technocrats or whatever. And that is not acceptable to Ashraf Ghani or Abdullah, because they are saying that we don't support the idea of an interim government. And I think that's very important, because not only Taliban, but also those opposed in Afghanistan to Ashraf Ghani government also want an interim government. Otherwise, I don't think that, they will agree to work under Ashraf Ghani. So there has to be a middle ground. For example, having a neutral government, having, sustaining some of the achievements in terms of education and human rights and women's rights, and also taking care of Taliban reservations, because they believe that, this government was installed by the Americans, and now that they are leaving, this government should also go.
All right, Rahimullah Yousafzai Sahab, kindly stay on line with us. Ali, you've just heard Rahimullah Sahab talking about the different aspects of the peace talks, and of course the middle ground that could or could not be achieved, and different perspectives that the Afghan Taliban and the Afghan government have. Whether it be not agreeing on the first point, ceasefire, one is on the first as the first point, the other has it as the last point as far as their discussions are concerned. Then comes the political future of Afghanistan as well, whether it be the Ashraf Ghani government that should continue, will not continue, because as per what Rahimullah Sahab says, they do not want Ashraf Ghani's government to continue. In all of this different perspectives and different political turmoil that Afghanistan is being faced with, how do you see these Afghan peace talks getting some kind of a success?
I think taking it off from where Rahim Sahab just mentioned, I think the bargain is essentially between three things. The Kabul administration wants to ensure their political survival, and in simple terms, the Afghan Taliban wants political legitimacy, recognition, and rise to power. So in terms of the middle ground, I don't see a middle ground unless we have a an interim government, which has individuals and participants which are acceptable to both players. Once that can come into play and an administration evolves which recognizes the ideological expectations of the Afghan Taliban, the political legitimacy and recognition that they expect, but also a very important leverage, like Rahim Saab rightly pointed out, their main leverage is violence. And so peace is the end, but not on the table right now. Because if they commit to giving up violence, they will lose their leverage. So that is unfortunate reality. So the peace will depend upon unfortunate reality that eventually who will rule Kabul. So unfortunately, I think
it's a question about who is going to rule Kabul in the next months or years.
In the next, next months or years. And I am skeptical about the prospect that this outcome will be achieved through peaceful negotiations, because the major leverage of Afghan Taliban is violence. Why the US administration is negotiating with Afghan Taliban is because violence is no longer affordable and sustainable for the US after 19 years. And they have learned this. So they are trying to tell the Kabul administration, Ashraf Ghani as well, that the future of Afghanistan depends upon you conceding what Afghan Taliban expect. So I think it's going to be murky, it's going to be violent, it's going to be a difficult struggle. The peace process will continue in tandem with violence. It will not be, besides violence. So we see, violence continuing in parallel with negotiations.
Okay.
And the outcome will eventually depend upon.
But Pakistan's role, nevertheless, will continue to be very important.
Pakistan is the only one which brought all these players on the table and has the capacity, the trust, and the confidence of all these players, which with over time has grown. And Pakistan is, Pakistan's leverage and soft power has grown in Afghanistan. And what I think Ambassador Sadiq has done a tremendous job in creating greater people-to-people contact between Afghan and Pakistani people, which translates into greater market access of Pakistani goods to Afghanistan, and vice versa.
But nevertheless, the future of the region will be bright if these peace talks are a success. Whenever and however these peace talks are a success, this is going to be a boom for the region. It is going to be a boom for Afghanistan, and this is what we hope. Next in line, ladies and gentlemen, is about Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Now, Indian Army planted weapons on bodies of slain Kashmiri civilians. Indian police have accused an Indian Army officer and two associates of planting weapons on the bodies of these laborers, or three laborers who were killed in disputed Kashmir in July, to make them look as if they were rebels in a staged gun battle. And in a rare kind of a situation, the Indian Army had a probe and has decided that, as per the outcome of that probe, that it was the Indians who were in the wrong and they were no terrorists. Not the first time. If you remember, in 2000, the Indian Army also killed 5 men alleged were rebels responsible for the massacre of 35 Sikhs in Kashmir. An investigation found out that the 5 were local villagers killed in a fake firefight. Ali, how do you make of that? This rare probe by the Indian Army, do you feel that A, this is to show the world that there are still some remnants of democracy left, or B, it is some kind of retribution for what they have done in the past?
I think this is the ultimate and timely vindication of Pakistan's stance and narrative vis-a-vis India, that India is a threat to international peace and security. It is using violence against peaceful people, against Kashmiris, and it is resorting to fake news and fake narrative, not just against Pakistan, but also against Kashmiris. And this episode is yet another evidence that India will resort to any means, fair or foul, to push its, to advance its agenda and to harm its commitment and the Kashmir cause. So I think what happened in case of the recent fake news episode, this is another yet manifestation of that. And I think India,
but this behavior has been accepted by India. You know, that is a little,
yes, that is something which is interesting, and I want to look at it closely in future. But because you go to Samjhota Express, you go to there have been a lot of false flag operation narratives as well. The leadership of Pakistan recently warned
and has been warning since some time,
the most important capitals in the world, that there is a real and clear danger of India resorting to another false flag operation. So what happened in 2019 February was another employment of India of their strategic fake narrative in order to justify their policies towards Kashmir and Pakistan, which are thankfully increasingly being exposed, and the world is beginning to realize and see through the fakeness of Indian narrative which they have built in the last 18-19 years.
Especially, you know, in this Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, and I'll kind of put a pause to this segment here now, because, you know, this is not the first time. In 2010, in 2000, and so on and so forth, there have been the people in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir have been falsely accused of being terrorists or of harboring terrorism or extremism. But in fact, what they are doing is trying to fight a legitimate end to their struggle for self-determination. They want their right to self-determination to happen. But in fact, it is being given a real twist by the Indians, not since now, but since some time. But this is a kind of very strange event that happened, this rare probe by the Indian Army that found out that in fact it was the Indian Army that was responsible for that. Not the first time, and I'm sure will not be the last time.
I think 2 points very importantly. I think what is happening, what BLA is doing, what TTP is doing, what the Indian Army is doing, what the Indian government is doing, it is all the resort to fake news and fake narrative to push their strategic agenda, number one. But I think there is perhaps a segment in the Indian military which realizes that being used by the Indian political leadership for their political agenda is against their service rules and ethics and the institutional interest of Indian military. So perhaps there is a gap which is emerging, and that needs to be carefully monitored.
All right, that gap needs to be carefully monitored. Quickly, ladies and gentlemen, we'll come to the last two segments. Firstly, second wave of the COVID-19, the number of cases that are on the increase. 1,800 COVID-19 infections have surfaced on Sunday, and Ahmedabad is at the epicenter of it all. I'd just like to say very briefly, ladies and gentlemen, do follow the SOPs. Please keep a lookout for people who you feel have the symptoms or not. You know the virus has mutated. You know that there are different vaccines that are coming as well. So you need to be very careful in these coming days, weeks and months, so that it does not propagate itself and come to a certain level where it will be not manageable by the government and the different hospitals, where the number of patients are increasing per day in different regions of Pakistan, as has been said by the NCOC. Because every day we hear of people losing their lives, every day, even in our near and dear ones. Be very careful, ladies and gentlemen. That is all I have to say. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, we will end on this beautiful note of a beautiful ghazal singer. Ladies and gentlemen, Iqbal Bano. Today is her 82nd birth anniversary. Iqbal Bano, born in 1938 in Delhi, was an acclaimed Pakistani ghazal singer. She, of course, passed away at the age of 74 in the year 2009. She is best known for her semi-classical Urdu ghazal songs and classical thumris. She was also honored with the Pride of Performance Award in 1974. But she is also very recognized for the way she sang Faiz Ahmed Faiz's ghazal in the late 1970s under a certain regime. And a lot of people remember her for her fiery tone and the way that she stood against certain segments of the society at that time. But nevertheless, a beautiful voice, a melodious voice, a legend that will remain with us forever and ever in our hearts and on different social media platforms, and here also on PTV World, where you can see her on the little window on the sideline. I will end with this little ghazal, as she said, Daaghe Dil Humko Yaad Aane Lage. This is one of her very famous ghazals, in fact, that you can always look out on different social media platforms and on YouTube. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we come to an end of today's newsroom. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow, the 29th of December, with new stories, new segments, stories that matter to you, to myself, and to our nation. Allah Hafiz and stay safe.